Hey guys, this is Brendan with Cinematica, and today we're going down a path you should follow with the evolution of Star Wars then versus now. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. Roll title crawl! I know Star Wars fans are used to starting fourth things first, but let's just say first things first here. Star Wars the movie has literally changed from then to now. Not in that The Last Jedi ruined my childhood kind of way, but in George Lucas's re-releasing of the original trilogy kind of way. Alterations like Darth Vader's forehead Brazilian, the ghosts of Christensen Pass, and Jabba's private palace performers were never a part of the original films. Star Wars was on the cutting edge of visual effects back in the day. George Lucas wanted it to stay that way and kept going back to his classics and just force-feeding them more stuff that no one really wanted. This exact ambition led him and the prequel trilogy to the dark side. Fans and even some of the actors like Anthony Daniels have criticized the sleek but soulless feeling that unnecessary 3D gave the prequels. Fortunately, the movies found their way back to the light with the recent installments beginning with The Force Awakens. J.J. Abrams resurrected the use of puppetry and animatronics. He realized the heart of Star Wars isn't just innovation, but nostalgia. While the recent Disney films have had their fair share of weird CGI uncanny valley folk like Maz Kanata and Snoke, the return to practical form has been one of the stronger suits of the new movies. Of course, they also have a natural edge in the aesthetic department because when Star Wars was in production, George Lucas had only recently had his big directorial break with American Graffiti, and was still far from the figure that he is today. His ideas were not yet a Disney-licensed phenomenon. Besides the lack of name recognition, Star Wars' very genre was an undesirable market. Sci-fi movies weren't exactly the highest-grossing movies of all time as they are now. In fact, no studio even wanted to take the risk on the Star Wars. Film studios were still reeling from the box office bust of 2001: A Space Odyssey. When Star Wars was finally funded, it was only given an $11 million budget. Now that's higher than the movie average of $5 million, but still way below the credit given to other titles like The Exorcist II or Close Encounters of the Third Kind. With inflation, it's only $40 million even by today's standards. That's just over 1/7 of The Force Awakens' final budget. Considering that each movie from the franchise has been the top grossing movie of each year since the cinematic relaunch in 2015, it goes without saying that Star Wars ain't no indie film anymore. Speaking of budgets, have you ever wondered how exactly the Empire generated enough galactic credits to fund an entire Death Star? If you thought it was like taxation and trade embargoes and space politics, then shame on you. You go and you throw out that Phantom Menace VHS tape right now, put it in the garbage, don't look back. You won't miss Liam Neeson, I swear. No, obviously it's merchandising rights. Worked for the entire movie franchise, right? Besides pulling in those box office bills, Star Wars product licensing has made a huge impact on its growth. There are chopsticks, there are Crocs, there's this extremely distressed C-3PO tape dispenser. Hell, you can buy your own Star Wars Lego Death Star and build it. No space politics needed. Nowadays, you won't even need Bothan spies to tell you how to put it together. Nowadays, Star Wars toys are 3D scanned from the actors and microchipped, probably using a more advanced technology than they used to make the entire first movie. Sphero now produces an app-controlled R2-D2, complete with sound effects, emotive waddles, hologram simulations, and a retractable third leg. The very first R2-D2 toy had none of that. It was equipped with all the latest innovations in sticker and head-clicking technology. They didn't even include R2's tripod leg. It's like making a C-3PO toy without his iconic tape dispenser crotch. We've come a long way since those Kenner figures. Luke Skywalker himself even called out the old model for being a, quote, generic lemon-haired Ken doll. And you can see in his tweet just how close a likeness toy sculptors can reach these days. With any luck in the future, we'll finally get the app-controlled C-3PO crotch tape dispensers that we've been waiting for. Okay, so C-3PO swag isn't exactly flying off the shelves, but it doesn't have to because of the time-honored tradition of Star Wars including cute merchandising cash banthas in the movies. It's been a tradition ever since Lucas realized that catering to kids kinda makes a franchise. Assuredly, his contract, which gave him half of the sales money, might have had something to do with that too. The decades have changed, but the debate remains the same. Do these cutesy cartoon characters hurt the movies? The first controversial characters were the Ewoks in 1983, with fans fans still arguing whether or not they really belonged in the story of the Return of the Jedi. Nowadays, the same conversation is had over the Porgs in The Last Jedi, even among the cast. The Porg presentiment, a phrase which nobody, including myself, has ever said, and which I immediately regret coining, has led to another important shift in the old ways. Star Wars merchandising is no longer laser-proof. Toy sales for the last movie saw a decline, which has been attributed to the fatigue that some viewers are facing with this clone army of movies that Disney keeps churning out. To grudgingly quote the prequels, you can't stop change any more than you can stop the sun from setting. And unless Rian Johnson makes up some new force powers again, no one on either side of the force can stop the setting sun. When Star Wars began, it was the brainchild of a single filmmaker with a vision. George Lucas was the Senate, the single driving force, spearheading the project from its humble farmland origins. Despite his intention of passing the baton along movie to movie, he never could bring himself to take both hands off the steering wheel completely. That led to him taking back more and more control during episode 5 and 6. Flash forward to the prequels and we see how well all that unlimited power worked out for him. Nowadays, Star Wars has taken a different approach, and it actually is a lot more like a Senate. They introduced the story group to keep track of all the galactic goings-on and make decisions by committee, almost like the Jedi High Council. Directors like Rian Johnson are free to come up with whatever they want for their projects. As long as the facts check out with the story group, they can basically do whatever. In fact, with all the upcoming movies, so many directors have the opportunity to try their hand at an installment that you really gotta wonder if they're losing the original vision. Wait, is this just Star Wars playing out in real life? Disney, your meta game is crazy. Since its acquisition of the brand, Disney has made a few moves that left fans with a bad taste in their mouths. The worst offense, though, was deconstructing the entire Star Wars expanded universe that authors, artists, and game designers had spent decades building out. Beloved lore like the Knights of the Old Republic, the Thrawn novels, and the hundreds of stories about every last minuscule side character were rendered entirely null and void. Some fans lost the universe that they fell in love with, and have watched it be replaced by something completely different. Take Luke Skywalker, for instance. Is it any wonder that his grizzled atheistic depiction in The Last Jedi was disappointing when you consider his alternate fate in the Legends? In the original EU novels, Luke married Mara Jade, had a son named Ben, and reformed the Jedi Council. Great, right? But with the Disney revisions, he reformed the Jedi Council, caused it to be destroyed by a pupil named Ben, and didn't even get married. The Last Jedi novelization rubs Creation salt in the wound because Luke has dreams that he has a real family, but it's just the Force and Kathleen Kennedy mocking us with what could have been. As Obi-Wan said, though, many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our point of view, and the rebooted point of view isn't all doom and gloom. Newest editions cover Princess Leia's rise as a key figure of the rebellion, the continuing adventures of the very alive Darth Maul, and details a fittingly tragic fate for Jar Jar Binks. Oh, and if you haven't watched Star Wars Rebels, Thrawn is back in that show anyway. For decades, the Star Wars fandom was pop culturally labeled as a boys' club, and a nerdy boys' club at that. It's not a completely untrue generalization. The cast and crews of the movies were a boys' club, with Mon Mothma, Aunt Beru, and Princess Leia as basically the only women to speak of. While statistics do show that most Star Wars fans are still adult men, there has been a noted shift in the Force. The modern sequel trilogy has a cast that is way more diverse than ever before, with the exception of, I guess, Yarael Poof, a Cumian on the Jedi High Council. Come on, that's just insane. But the inclusivity of the recent films isn't just an abstract agenda. Representation matters to fans. When Rogue One came out, a story went viral about a woman who took her Mexican father to see it. He was shocked and then jubilant to hear Diego Luna using his Latino accent as Cassian Andor. Meanwhile, Rey quickly became a role model for girls, and the Forces of Destiny web series was launched to tell the stories of the franchise's leading ladies. On the merchandising front, there was a Where's Rey movement that demanded there be more action figures of the character and her universe, a website of geeky apparel for women modeled by Ahsoka Tano's voice actress Ashley Eckstein. The tales go on and on, but as long as Star Wars is an international sensation, it should look international. The most recent installment in the Star Wars cinematic canon, The Last Jedi, had audiences more split than the ground beneath Kylo and Rey. While some have claimed that this polarized reception is a sign that the franchise just isn't resonating with its audience, one thing is true. It's not like Star Wars was not polarizing before. The fandom just reveres The Empire Strikes Back as the pinnacle of the franchise now, but at the time of its release, people actually had their fair share of smack to talk about it. Some fans didn't believe that Darth Vader was actually Luke's father. They thought the movie's ending didn't resolve enough of the plot. They said the jokes were dumb. They thought the pacing was weird. In short, all the criticism that The Last Jedi has received. Meanwhile, early reviews of The Phantom Menace called it dazzling and daring, and we know all too well the legacy that film has now. I'm Brendan, and thanks for watching Star Wars Then vs. Now. Did we miss any significant changes in the series? Comment below and let us know. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. If you want to see more videos like this one, consider supporting our Patreon, where we post sneak peeks at new pilots, behind-the-scenes footage, extended creator interviews, and more. And remember, Frederator loves you.